Thank you everybody for joining me today. The class that we are going to be doing today is called Montreal Convention 101, representing passenger personal injury claims arising on international flights. Another name for this class could be called Aviation Law for Personal Injury Lawyers. The idea today is I want personal injury lawyers to get familiar with aviation law, and if you get a call from a potential new client, I want you to be able to evaluate their claim when they say I got hurt on an airplane or I got hurt in an airport. I want you to be able to evaluate the merits of the claim, the facts, and tell them whether or not they have a good case or whether or not the case isn't going to work out based on what they've told you. So there's a lot to go over today, so I just want to dive right in. The Montreal Convention, and actually, first of all, why should you listen to me? My name's Erin Applebaum, as the slide says. I work for Kreindler and Kreindler. We are a plaintiff's aviation injury firm. All we do is represent plaintiffs. My practice is focused primarily on representing passengers who are injured in accidents, plane crashes, complex personal injury matters. I've dedicated my entire career to representing people who were hurt during the course of travel. This is my focus, and I'd love to share it with all of you. So Kreindler and Kreindler, that's all we do, aviation law. We author the Aviation Accident Law Treatise. I'd recommend that you give it a look if you ever are interested in finding out more, something I didn't cover today. Pretty much the entire breadth of aviation law is covered in that treatise. So the Montreal Convention, what we're focused on today, is a multinational treaty governing international air travel. So if you are injured during the course of an international flight, whether it is boarding your flight, getting off the flight, or on the plane, your claim is governed by this treaty called the Montreal Convention. If you are hurt in the airport and you're in the central terminal building at LaGuardia Airport and you trip and fall, whether or not you're hurt in that building or 10 minutes later when you're boarding your plane, there's an entirely different set of rules that governs what is going to happen with your case. So it's really important to become familiar with this law if you want to be able to assist people who are hurt during travel. So the Montreal Convention is the newer version of what's called the Warsaw Convention. The Warsaw Convention was enacted in 1929 at the dawn of commercial air travel. The airlines didn't want to go bankrupt in case of a crash. So what they did is they made essentially a deal saying that we will compensate passengers who are injured or killed during flight in exchange for a limit on liability. The Warsaw Convention had very low liability. Passengers were not compensated much, but as time went on, limits increased. And then in 1999, there were a lot of different doctrines around the world governing air safety, and they were all consolidated into what's now known as the Montreal Convention. So the Warsaw Convention is known as the predecessor of Montreal. Montreal superseded it. There are 137 signatory states, including the United States. It was ratified in 1999 and acted in 2003. It modernized the law. The limits were raised, the burden of proof shifted. It used to be that the passengers would have to be completely responsible for proving that the airline had been responsible for their injuries. Now there's essentially strict liability on air carriers up to a certain point. There also used to be a standard under the Warsaw Convention of willful misconduct, where the passengers had to prove that the carrier had willfully done something that caused them to become injured. No more. Now there's strict liability. So Warsaw language was adopted to such an extent that the federal courts actually allow attorneys still to rely on the Warsaw Convention and cases that, precedent that was set under the Warsaw Convention because it's so equivalent to Montreal. A couple things that's really important to know is the Montreal Convention completely preempts state law. If you have no recourse under the Montreal Convention, you have no recourse under state law. So if the convention does not apply, you can't go back and say, I want to sue under New York state law for emotional damages. Well, if you can't sue under Montreal, you're out of luck.